back to Turning Hustle into Legacy. Today's episode is not just a message, it's a mirror. We're kind of talking about something most people avoid, they deny, or even try to outrun: losing or the loss of something. Today's topic, I wanted to say, the gift hidden inside of losing. A lot of people think of losing or taking a loss as a bad thing. And guess what? I'm here to tell you, my darling, it's just not. It's not. But I will say, loss can be a breakup. It could be betrayal. It could be, a job ending, an opportunity that slipped, a dream that died, a person you thought would stay forever but didn't. But I'm here to tell you today, we're not just talking about the pain of losing something. We're talking about the gift that's hidden inside of loss. So I'll say this: clarity, strength, elevation, transformation, and most importantly, rebirth. Because sometimes I think God, life, and or even the universe doesn't take something away to hurt you, but to make room for who you're becoming, right? So let's get right into it. Let's start with segment 1, the loss as a turning point. So here's the part people don't tell you. Loss doesn't always show up as a tragedy. Sometimes it kind of show up as a shift, a change in things, which may not be for the worse. So the thing you lost, the person you lost, the opportunity that slipped through your fingers, right? It wasn't destruction. We can look at that and say it was direction, right? So some losses feel like your life is just falling apart. Today was one of them days for me. I'm like, oh God, my life. But later you then kind of realize it was actually falling into alignment. It wasn't falling apart. It's falling into alignment. I'm sitting here thinking, speaking with one of my bestest friends, and, we're thinking about, business decisions and just moving on to the next venture. And I felt like, oh my God, my life is falling apart. I don't have any money to do this. And honestly, this can be the start of something great. So it could be falling into an alignment. Loss is a turning point. The moment life says, you're done here, but it's time for the next chapter. But because we're human, we cling to the same things. We're accustomed to repetitive, behaviors or natures. We hold on, we fight, and we beg for what's already expired, to be honest. And so when it finally leaves, we kind of may call it a heartbreak, but not realizing it's actually rebirth. So let's talk about the clarity. It could be clarity literally in chaos. Like, have you ever noticed how sometimes you don't even know how confused you were? Until life takes something away. You lost snaps, you awake. Loss strips away the noise. Loss removes people you outgrow. But you kind of didn't want to admit it. Loss can, expose the truth you were scared to face. It could force you to see things you ignore for way too goddamn long. But clarity doesn't usually come in comfort. Clarity comes in collapse, right? It may come and just, it can come on these moments where you just say, wow, I don't even know how deep I was drowning until the thing left me. You know what I mean? That could be relationship, that could be love, it could be business, it could be all kinds of things, right? But suddenly you see yourself, and then you start seeing your value, your worth, your strength, and even your next level. So sometimes loss clears the path that loyalty kept blocking. So to me, the discipline that's kind of born from emptiness, we can talk about that. Discipline. It's not the Instagram version or the pretty calendar or the cute planner. No, I'm talking about the discipline born from desperation. The discipline born from saying, I can't lose myself again. The discipline born from survival, born from, I refuse to go back to the version of me that tolerated that bullshit. Loss forces you to build new habits because you have no choice. You ain't got no backup. Your old routine died with old seasons, but you realize, how much you gave to the wrong people, or the wrong situations. But then something major is taken away. Your priorities change, discipline sharpens. Your focus even intensifies. So that empty space kind of becomes accountability. The quiet storm becomes a direction. So loss can teach you to grow up in ways comfort damn near never could. So there's just a version of strength you kind of earn only after something breaks you. I noticed that even in my own life. I thought when I would stop doing foster care at my own home, I'm like, oh God, the world is over. But, I didn't realize how strong I was until, you know, I survived what I thought would destroy me. I kept going when quitting looked just way easier. I really struggled with that. I got up on days I couldn't even breathe. Shit. I rebuilt from nothing basically, but I let go also of what was killing my peace. So people don't, they always talk about the strength that comes from loss because it's not glamorous. That shit's not easy. It's stressful. It's not pretty. It's not inspirational. It's just, it could carry, through what nobody else knew about, which is strength. Loss doesn't weaken you, it reveals you. The version of you that walks out of loss is not the same version that walked into it. You become wiser, sharper, stronger, more intentional, less tolerant of nonsense. Think about it. When you were younger and you dated all these ridiculous ass fuckers and you look back now, you're like, what the hell was I doing with that person, right? You're in a space of protecting your peace. And honestly, that's a gift. It's a gift to become wiser, sharper, stronger, and more intentional, and definitely less tolerant of bullshit. That is a gift, and it's just you becoming wiser as an individual. So I'll say, though, here's the real twist. Sometimes elevation looks like loss before it looks like a reward. Before you rise, life will remove certain stuff. People you can't grow with. Habits you can't sustain. A mindset you can't grow with. Environments that limit you. In a relationship that can drain you. It feels like subtraction. But it's actually preparation. A lot of people pray for elevation, but don't realize elevation requires elimination. Ooh, let me say it again. People may pray for elevation, but they don't realize elevation requires elimination. You cannot take expired attachments to the next level. You can't take unhealed versions of yourself into the future, and you damn sure can't take everybody with you. So most people want the view, but they don't want to climb. So you gotta, listen, elevation requires a room, and loss creates that room. That's the hidden gift. That is the hidden gift. So loss can shake your confidence. It can make you question everything. Was I enough? Why wasn't I chosen? Why this didn't work? But let me tell you something. Loss is not always a reflection of your value. Sometimes it's proof of your value. So sometimes life removes things because you deserve it. You were settling, you were shrinking. You was damn near portraying yourself. This is the season where you're going to rebuild your confidence. You're going to speak life over yourself. You're going to rediscover your power. Reclaim your identity. You're going to choose yourself again. You didn't lose it. You was just repositioned. Let's say it like that. Right? So listen, loss hurts, but it doesn't end you. I know it feels like something was taken, but truthfully, something was made possible. So there is a gift hidden inside of loss or losing something. A gift of clarity, a gift of discipline, a gift of strength, and a gift of elevation. You are not the same person you were before that loss. And that's the point. Your next level needed a stronger, wiser, more focused version of you. Loss created that version. So don't just mourn what left. Honor what arrived. So this is Turning Hustle into Legacy with Dr. Stance. And remember, sometimes losing something is how you finally gain yourself. I'll see y'all next episode. Don't forget, like, share, and subscribe.